What's up, girlfriends? Welcome to Girlfriend Therapy Podcast. You guys know I have been having, I say this every week, the most amazing conversations with some of the most amazing women. I tell you guys, if you've not just poked someone that you work with or someone that you see often and say, tell me something about yourself, or try to find some kind of common conversation that you are just dying to have with someone. And this is what my guest is today, Miss Sydney Viegas. She is a co-worker, and I can't even think of when I asked her to be on the podcast, but I was like, I need you on my podcast because I love this generation of women and how they think, and they're so unapologetic. And you guys know Girlfriend Therapy Ministry. We are, without apology, without compromise. So I love to talk to real women about real topics. And I'll tell you guys, today's topic, we're going to talk about the Roe v. Wade and all the controversy and all the conversation around that. Even though this is a Christian platform, as a woman, we still have that alliance as well, if that makes sense. So I thought it would be, first of all, irresponsible for me not to have the conversation, but I think it will also be inauthentic for me not to have the conversation because it's an important conversation and it's a topic that affects and impacts us women, no matter what your walk of life is, no matter what your beliefs are. This is a conversation that we all should be having from a very genuine and authentic place, from a very real place. So I'm excited to have my guest Sydney on today, and we're going to talk about Roe v. Wade and everything that it entails. Hey, Sydney, welcome so much, and thank you so much for being on the Girlfriend Therapy platform.
Hey, Kwanza, thanks for having me. And you had asked before when you first asked me to be on your podcast, and I think it was back in February. And
awesome.
I saw it on my calendar. I was like, "Whoa, that really popped up!" And you and I talked last week to kind of set up the logistics, and all the news about the possible overturn of Roe versus Wade has been in the news and in my mind lately. And to be frank, I haven't been reading too much about it, honestly, because it gives me so much anxiety that I try to stay away from it on a daily basis. But having a constructive conversation about it, I think, is really good because I need to talk about it. Pretending something doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. So having a conversation about it in this kind of format, I think is good and constructive and not emotionally charged.
Exactly. And I think that there may be, some real feelings because we're women, and this is a topic I think at my age, it doesn't necessarily impact me and, what I plan to do in the future. I think Mother Nature has made that decision for me. But I will tell you, and I, like you said, we talked last week briefly, just to kind of, see what we wanted to talk about. And I think that's the beauty of, scheduling these conversations. We just don't know what might come up in the news or, where you might be 4 months later, right? And saying, oh, this is like back in February, you probably was like, oh, I think I might want to talk about this. And then, things happen and the headlines change and, something new that, is the topic at the top of your, your mind and your heart and all that stuff. So I guess just to jump right in, like what about this possible overturning of Roe v. Wade kind of really sparked a reaction or response from you?
Well, I've always been really supportive of a woman's right to choose. This topic could affect any of us, any woman of childbearing age or anybody with a uterus, frankly.
Exactly.
And I don't, I can't speak for everybody, but I don't know that many people are like, yeah, I love abortion and I really want to have one. I've heard lots of stories of people who have had them out of necessity. It was a very wanted pregnancy. They did not want to have an abortion, but they had to have one, or, like some medical issue, or, it was an accident. And these people have lots of kids already. And it's not just, stupid young women who use it as birth control kind of thing. So it's a very nuanced, topic. And I don't know that everybody gets all of those viewpoints when they think about it because it is such a polarizing issue. But I saw it pop up, much the same time everybody else did. And it's been something that I've thought about for the past couple of years, just because of the way, the Supreme Court has been headed and the political spectrum and things like that. And that this could be a very real possibility. And, looking at this, it also brings to mind a possible regression of other things that are currently protected that may not be explicitly stated in the Constitution, like the right to marry who you choose, racial rights, voting rights, which, you know, are already under attack.
Exactly.
So long story short, that's kind of what brought this to my mind. And I saw it. And like I said, I haven't been looking into it too much because it's so freaks me out so much that, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it at this time. So I'm going to kind of stay away from going down too much of a rabbit hole on a daily basis.
But I think like one of the things we talked about is like, what does it mean? And I know just throughout my entire life, you know, it's always like abortion has always been an option. You know, I was born in 1971 and I don't know when Roe v. Wade first, you know, what became a thing. But
I think it was around that time. It might have been 1973.
Okay. So, but I feel like, you know, as
1973.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess majority of my life, and certainly during my childbearing years, that's always been an option. And so you hear stories about what it was like before, you know, women were able to get legal abortions. But I think you know, not even just talking about Roe v. Wade by itself, but really talking about pro-choice, I think is the bigger conversation. And women having the right to say what they're going to do with their bodies. Regardless, right?
Yes, definitely. Because being pro-choice doesn't mean you're pro-abortion.
Exactly.
You know, I wouldn't say I'm pro-abortion. You know, I don't think about it and I'm like, yeah, this is an awesome thing. And I haven't met anyone who's had an abortion who, you know, is just like, yeah, I really wanted that.
Right.
You know, like they were thankful that they had that option. But they, you know, it wasn't like, this is something I really want to experience in my life. You know, I have a really good friend who disclosed to me that when we were, well, I'm a year older than her, but when she was a freshman in college, she accidentally got pregnant the summer before school started, like while she was there on summer session, and thankfully was able to get an abortion because that would have ruined her entire college plans. And she's she's a married mom of 3.
Wow.
You know, so who knows where she would be now if she didn't have that option. And so it's not pro-abortion, it's just pro, I don't own somebody else's body. I don't know what their circumstances are. I have no right to make that decision for them. I don't know them, you know?
Exactly. And I think, like you mentioned, I mean, there's so much nuance in that space. But I don't think that the Supreme Court, their decision is really taking into consideration the nuance. It's like, you know, they're trying to throw this blanket solution to, you know, a problem that has many layers.
Definitely.
Like we were sharing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Keep going.
No, go ahead. I'll get to it.
I was just going to say, and them overturning Roe versus Wade does not criminalize abortion at the federal level. It just doesn't make it protected at the federal level. And the problem with that is, and I don't know the exact number, there are a number, at least 13 states that have trigger laws in effect. So they have preemptively passed legislation that makes it so that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, it will effectively ban abortion in their states, or make it at some crazy week, like 6 weeks, where many women don't even know that they're pregnant. Because for lots of people who don't know, and I didn't know this until a couple months ago, the first 2 weeks of, you know, whenever you say you're 6 weeks or 8 weeks pregnant, whatever, the first 2 weeks, you're not actually pregnant. So the first 2 weeks is prior to conception. So if you're 6 weeks pregnant, that fetus, or it's an embryo or a zygote at that point, has only existed for 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, you might not have any symptoms or no. And unless you're actively, you know, testing and trying and all that, it's very possible to not know you're pregnant till past whatever that arbitrary date is.
Yeah. So. And it's interesting because I think that would happen, like that would kick in immediately if they're already kind of positioning themselves for that ruling to be overturned.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it's Louisiana just passed a bill to ban abortion from conception.
Wow.
Literally from conception. And normally, that would be taken to the Supreme Court or, higher court, and that would be overturned. But because we're in this limbo right now, where the Supreme Court hasn't issued an actual ruling yet, what we've seen is just leaks.
Right.
That might be totally moot at this point.
Wow.
So,
and it's interesting because, when we talk about it, like, what does it mean? And obviously it's going to mean something maybe slightly different for each state. But
yeah,
does this
definitely
mean that if Louisiana, passes whatever laws they're going to pass, does that mean that, women in Louisiana will have to go to another state? Will they be able to do that? Would that add more cost, more expense, even more maybe danger to the process to have to travel so far to have this procedure and then have to travel back? Or do you stay, what does it mean to have to, kind of go around these laws to get a legal abortion, or, what would that mean? And what does it look like?
Absolutely. Yes, they would have to travel to other states. And there are certain states, and I want to say Texas, I really should have written down some facts before this, but there is an anti-abortion law in, I believe, Texas, where
that sounds very Texas.
It does. Somebody can sue you or anybody who helps you to procure an abortion.
Oh, wow.
After a certain point, literally sue you.
So you mean somebody as in anybody, or somebody as
who
in
finds out that you had an abortion after whatever the cutoff date is?
Oh my.
Or that you traveled to another state to procure an abortion, can sue you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so that's like a whole other level of, you have to keep this secret because somebody might snitch on you.
Wow.
Yes, very, very strange. But with travel, not all, there's many women who don't have the means to travel because of finances, because they don't have reliable transportation, because they don't know anybody. I know there are for states like this now. I love Reddit, and I spend a lot of time on Reddit. I know that there is a subreddit called I think it's the Anti Network.
Okay.
And it's a whole subreddit that helps women who cannot obtain an abortion in their home state for whatever reason to figure out how to safely get one somewhere.
Wow.
And where to go. And, there's people that I think they can stay with and things like that. People volunteer. So that's really nice. It's just,
but it feels so underground, right?
Exactly. And that's what it used to be like before it was federally legal, And I think that the main thing is women are not going to stop having abortions,
right?
Just because it's illegal. If you make it illegal, women are going to have dangerous abortions.
Exactly.
I've read about coat hanger abortions back in the 60s and 70s, and some poor mother who died trying to give herself an abortion and had other kids, and her body was found in a hotel room, and that's just barbaric. It's a medical procedure, should take place in a medical facility, and it should not be political.
And I think that's the big part of it. I keep struggling with this was the church and state separation. I'm like, when did we, because I thought that was a part of the foundation of the countries, that separation of church and state, right? But it's like, when did those lines become so blurred?
I feel like it's been, I'm 31, so I've only been alive since the early 90s. So but from what I read, it seems like it started coming about in the 80s or the late 80s, maybe with, at least from what I know, like Ronald Reagan-ish.
Okay.
That has started coming into politics. And then we have the rise of like the religious right. And, I used to not like a certain group of politicians back in the day. And when I look at them now, I'm like, wow, they were so moderate. How did I not like them? And then when I look at the ones now, I'm like, oh my God, I'll take the old ones over the new ones any day.
Exactly. But I think because one of the issues that I have, even as a Christian, one of the issues that I have is that even within our faith, God says you have the right to choose, right? He says, I lay before you life and death, blessings and curses, choose life. So, but you have a choice.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like when, the religious right tries to say that, no, this is like, we have to tell you how to, like we have to remove that choice from you. It's like, are you pretending to be God? Like, are you, asserting yourself over God?
Exactly.
Like, and that to me, as a Christian, that kind of, it doesn't sit well with me. But I still think at the end of the day, a woman should have the right to choose what happens to her body. She should have the ability to have medical support through whatever process she chooses, right? Whether she decides to carry a baby full term, she should have access to medical care for that. But she should also have access to medical care if for whatever reason she decides not to carry a baby full term.
Definitely. And so I don't think a woman's right to choose should ever be taken away, but it's an extra slap in the face that in our country, they're trying to force you to have a baby that you don't want or can't afford. And then there is no social support system for women who want their babies even. It's very expensive. Paid parental leave is not the law of the land.
Exactly.
European countries get like a year of paid parental leave at least.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's great if a company has like 2 weeks, and it's like, that is a major medical thing that's happening to you. You can't go back after 2 weeks. And what are you supposed to do with this tiny creature that now relies on you?
Yeah.
There's that. There's adoption, which that's not, there's so many kids waiting to be adopted. It's not like that's a magical answer.
Right.
The foster care system is not very good. You hear horror stories about that. So it's basically, we really want you to have a baby until it's born, and then you're out of luck. We don't care about you. We don't care about living children. We don't care that they're fed or taken care of. We don't care that you can afford to, feed yourself or your kids.
Exactly.
So it's just, again, I would never advocate for taking away that right to choose, but it's an extra slap in the face that they don't want to provide any support system to that. Like, I know the majority of a particular party recently voted against providing extra funding towards ending the formula crisis that we currently have.
Right.
And it's the party that,
it's pro-life, right?
Says they're so pro-life, but they don't want to, pay any extra money to feed babies that exist.
Wow.
And I've seen articles about women, they're in a crisis because they can't feed their babies. And that's very frustrating.
Right. It feels like we're in a twilight zone to some degree, because I think what we tend to do as a nation, and not just on this topic, but we always just seem to pull a little piece out of a large topic and just kind of focus on that. But it's like we have to be able to pull that thread from conception to, throughout the life of this being, right?
Because it has to be a holistic approach and
not just this piece and then the other 90%. Well, we wipe our hands of that. It's so odd to me. Like, it really feels very odd to me. But we do a good job of just having conversations in that little vacuum and not look at the larger picture. And then even when you try to present that larger argument, it's like, well, no, that's that's different. It's like, no, it's the same.
It's not different. Yeah, exactly. If you're going to force somebody to bring a child into this world, are you going to pay for it?
Exactly.
And that's another thing. It very much frustrates me that the majority of people legislating and fighting for this are men who,
oh my gosh, that's the worst.
Do not have a uterus, not get pregnant, never have to experience this.
Exactly.
women who want to have kids, and do it on purpose, it's a very hard thing. And there's lots of frustration that you have to deal with. And, lots of frustration that mothers deal with from, our health insurance system and how expensive things are to, questionable scientific information that some OBs give, to, things like that. So, somebody who doesn't necessarily want to have a child, it's very tough. And
Right.
Men will never understand what that's like or have to be in that situation. So, that would be like me legislating, I don't know, men getting erectile dysfunction medication, or, I read this meme a couple weeks ago, and I would never advocate for this, because this is also violating somebody's bodily autonomy. But it said, pregnancy doesn't happen without men and without sperm. So let's give.
I know where you're going with that, right?
Yeah, let's give all men vasectomies, and then they can get them reversed once they prove that they can afford a child, and they're going to be responsible. Again, it's just something. It's just something to bring up, like how ridiculous the argument is. It's like people forget that it takes two to make a baby, but all the, like by biological design, only we can carry the baby, but it's like the bonus falls only on women.
Exactly.
They're trying to legislate away our bodies. So.
Yeah, and I think that really is, like, that's the bigger issue, which is funny because I was watching this, I don't know one of those little like night shows, like, I don't know what it is, but they were like going out talking to, I think, women on college campuses.
Okay.
And it was like more, conservative leaning, whatever this program was. But the girl was kind of asking them, like, so yeah, with the Roe v. Wade, they were saying, what's your position on that? And of course, you're on a college campus, people are mostly liberal. And so their position was, women's right to choose. You shouldn't be able to tell someone what to do with their body, the same talking points. And so then a girl switched the conversation, and she said, so what do you think about, the COVID vaccine? And of course, the other, the people are like, oh, people need to get vaccinated. So what she was trying to do was kind of compare these two things that really, I guess on a higher level, they are comparable, because again, you're talking about what people can do with their body. So it's like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but with the vaccine one, that's for the many, right? For the benefit of the many.
Absolutely.
And then when you're talking about, childbirth and child rearing, that really typically comes down to one household.
Exactly. It falls to one person.
And ultimately one person, right? So it's not the same. Then again, we talk about that long-term care versus in the long-term need versus this time, your space and time where, the idea of everybody getting on one page with regards to the vaccine could potentially save lives, right?
Absolutely.
But so it's like this conversation that just seems so ridiculous, because in the same breath, if we're saying that these vaccines can help to save a life, and you're saying that you are pro-life, like that argument can be, flipped to that side as well.
I 100% agree. And that's very interesting that you bring that up. I think I've thought of this before, but it's been a while. But it's like, with the vaccine, you can't go out in public while unvaccinated and control that you're spreading germs or not, or that you're going to carry this virus onto somebody else. You can't. You have a body. You have to, deal with it. And you can remain unvaccinated, but you should probably stay at home or not go to crowded area. You're welcome to do that, but you can't partake in certain events or situations or things like that. You know what I mean?
But it's like, I don't want to get the vaccine. I don't want to wear the mask. I still want to hang out. It's like, okay.
I care about life, but I don't care about protecting elderly people or children.
Exactly.
Or, exactly. My stepmom's mother is like that. She does not want to get the vaccine because she thinks there's like some chip in it or something crazy. And I'm just, they're not my grandparents, they're just my step grandparents. But I'm like, okay, when I have a child in the future, you have to get certain vaccines. You know,
Yeah.
you have to get a Tdap shot, and I wouldn't want somebody unvaccinated around, you know, with COVID around my future child or
Yeah.
whatever. But it's like, oh yeah, we could possibly pass this horrible thing onto a tiny baby. We don't care. Our own comfort
Yeah.
is more important. So
Yeah.
that is a really interesting comparison, though.
Right. And it was funny the fact that she was kind of like, I gotcha. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
you could literally flip that same argument over and I gotcha. You know, it's like that's the bizarre state I think that we're in.
Yes.
That
And I mean, you could also compare that to, and this is such a hot topic, gun control.
exactly.
You know, especially with the shooting last week, where a bunch of elementary school children died. Do we care about their lives? Do we care about doing things to protect their lives? No, we just care about legislating
Yeah.
women's bodies for children that aren't even here yet.
Yeah. It definitely is I don't know. And I don't know where we go from here.
Yeah.
You know, just as a nation. And I think the crazy thing is that everything is so very cyclical. And so some of these topics, you know, they come up, then they die off, and then they come back up. And because this isn't the first time that Roe v. Wade was threatened to be overturned, or at least proposed to be overturned. So, you know, I don't know what this, you know, particular stage is going to lead to, but, you know, hopefully, you know, cooler heads will prevail. And they would continue to allow women. I hate even, it sounds crazy to say even allow women.
Yeah.
Right. But, you know, that women can continue to have, you know, agency over their own bodies and their own beings.
Absolutely. And it seems so like dystopian. I don't know if you've ever watched The Handmaid's Tale, but
exactly.
It's very, you know, and I felt like that over the last couple of, the last, I don't know, 6 years. And then this happens and I'm like, oh God, what's happening now?
Exactly.
It's just, you know, obviously we're not to that point or anything. And I don't think it would ever get to that point, but with the religious overtones in politics and with this and all that, it's like, it's way too paternalistic.
Right. And I think it's interesting too, because I mean, you mentioned like with the religious overtone, I think it's something more, dare I use the word deviant beneath it.
Yeah.
Like you would hide behind this idea of love and this idea of, you know, Christianity and, you know, all that stands for. But I can't help but feel like there's something a little more deviant in this particular, not just this particular argument, but, you know, all of the arguments where it comes to gun control and all of that is not, you know, it's kind of like you wear, we're just so double-minded.
Yes, I agree.
We're so hypocritical, right?
Absolutely. Because why are religious people in politics so focused on that one issue? And then everything else that, you know, is Christian is thrown out the window, like charity, loving thy neighbor.
Exactly.
You look at some of these politicians, they don't seem very loving.
Not at all.
Or charitable or honest, or you know, things like that. And I guarantee you, and I've heard of this before, but again, don't have any specific instances, but you know, if it was one of their daughters who needed an abortion, they changed their tune real quick.
Yeah. And always, and they would do it without batting an eye. And they would do it, you know, without the added risk that, you know, some other people may, you know, find themselves having, being under. But again, that goes back to the hypocritical part of it.
Yes.
Like it's amazing. And I'm always kind of looking, you know, sideways. And I know everybody gets, but I think that's the point, right?
Yeah.
You know, when we say the right to choose, that means you have a right to not get an abortion, right? That means you have a right to have as many children as you want. But we still can't take away the choice for someone else who thinks differently. And I think that's the big issue that I have with it.
I agree. And, you know, I feel the same way. Like, I totally respect somebody who is, you know, against abortion for themselves and does not want to have one and carries their pregnancy to term, and, you know, gives their child up for adoption or keeps them.
Exactly.
And in the same, you know, I don't agree with people whose teenage daughters accidentally get pregnant, they force them to have an abortion. Nobody should be forced to have an abortion.
Right, exactly.
That's very traumatic. That would be so traumatic. And I hear a lot of people who complain about, people who are on welfare keep having children. They should be sterilized. Like, that's terrible. People should be allowed to have as many kids as they want. And, while maybe if I was in that financial situation, I wouldn't. We don't know their circumstances, and you don't want to get involved with legislating people's bodies on either side.
Exactly, and I think that really is the point. Not getting caught up in legislating people's bodies. Period. I know one of the things because as I think about this topic, of course, like the people that I spend time with are women of my age, so we haven't really had the conversation. But I did talk with my daughter, who is like your age, and she's very. I think you guys' generation is very much of you should have a choice. Like, I think that's the majority of your generation. But then it's like us older women that feel like we still have a say so. Because I guess I have an issue too. Like I said, people have a right to choose. Well, they should have a right to choose. That's the argument. But when women of my age, that this will not impact, right? Like, just being 100% honest. When they have us on the front line saying, "Oh no, you shouldn't be able to," like, that is so bizarre to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel that a large amount of our political spectrum right now is made up of older people. Exactly. Mostly older white men who, number one, will never get pregnant. And if it's older women, can't get pregnant now. Exactly. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like millennials, Gen X are kind of the majority of our population now. And we do not hold the same views as the old men who are creating this legislation. And it's kind of like they're holding on for dear life. And it's just, I know you can't do this because it's age discrimination, but you know how there's like an age threshold where you have to be over a certain age to run for Congress or to be the president. There should be a cutoff too. Yeah. Because at a certain point, your opinion is no longer relevant.
Yeah. It reminds me of that. Oh, you're probably too young to remember this. The old Crypt Keeper. Do you ever remember this? Like,
I know what you're talking about. I'm imagining in my head.
Right. And it's like that claw, that old, dead claw, just still holding on. It's like, let go already.
Let go. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And it really is. It's like, I talked to my dad about politics, and, we differ on some fundamental things, but he's like, we have really great conversations. Yeah. And he was thinking, he was saying to me, he doesn't think politics can go on like this for too much longer. Nothing happens because the only thing that they care, and this is not every politician. I know there are some people out there that really care and get involved in politics because they want to make a difference. But the political machine right now is just fighting against each other. It's deadlocked and nothing gets done. And they only do things to irk the other party. Yeah. Nothing happens, when there is a president in office and the Congress is of a different party. Nothing is ever going to get done. Yeah. And it can't go on like that, because what are we paying these people for with our tax money? He's thinking that in like the next 10 years, something's going to change somehow politically. It seems so impossible now, but introducing other parties or, what have you, I have no idea how it's going to change, but I don't think that this is a sustainable long-term system.
I would agree. But I think the sad part is, there are a lot of things, especially when it comes around to like the election seasons, particularly for like presidential elections. Then you start hearing these conversations about, oh, there should be a third party. You start hearing the conversations about, oh, we shouldn't have lobbyists, and people shouldn't be able to have the campaign funds and all of this stuff. And the conversation comes up just only during that time. But then once the election is over, everybody gets quiet, and only for it to be revisited. But I think the bizarre thing as well is when you look across even the party lines, which is why I always cringe when people get so, oh, I'm, this or I'm that. It's like, here's the deal. Both parties are being heavily funded by interest groups, right?
Yes.
On both sides. So you look at the NRA, they're not only funding the Conservative Party or the Republican Party, but they're also, I hate to use the Conservative Party, but they're not only funding the Republican Party, but they're funding the Democratic Party as well. Yeah. And so when we think about, something like gun laws, I think the first term, or either at some point during most presidencies, like, no matter whether there was a Republican president, there's some point during that term, especially if they got, 2 consecutive terms, where they had the full House and the full Senate and the presidency. And a lot of these things that we would say should be easily to change wasn't changed, no. And that's on both sides. So
absolutely. People, and it's, I don't think people realize how little power the president actually has. Right. You know what I mean? Like when they make all these promises, and of course they would love to do all that stuff, but there's all this red tape and they have to go through the process. And, maybe a very small fraction of that stuff will ever end up getting done. And it's not necessarily from lack of trying. It's just they're one cog in the machine of the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, and they can only do what they can do, and they have to walk a fine line to appeal to their voter base, and they have to make concessions, or they didn't really care about that so much, and we find that out later when they don't do anything about it. So
but I think, honestly, as long as they can keep the people so divided, then they're not going to have to make any real decisions on anything. And I say that across the board. I think unless something really, changes within a political, like I said, this whole political machine, we're going to continue to see the same things. And it's going to be, it's going to be cyclical, and it's going to just, go from one generation to the next generation. And these topics and these issues will continue to bubble to the surface, and then they'll kind of, fall down and then, or die down. And then something else will be the topic of, the top heavy topic. But I think
I agree.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think things are so hateful right now.
Right.
It's just, I don't remember a time where politics was this hateful and this personal.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have to admit, there are certain people that when I hear that they believe in some political thing, I no longer respect them. Yeah. But it's because we have things now that have become a part of politics that are totally illogical and not based in any facts. And there's now alternative facts and crazy things like the vaccine's going to implant you with a chip, and 5G is causing the coronavirus, and QAnon. Politicians eat children's adrenal gland, like that kind of stuff.
It is very, very bizarre.
Yeah, like if you were a normal Democrat or Republican, and you follow whatever, you follow the Republican Party because you are fiscally conservative and you want to reform taxes and you believe XYZ thing, or you're a Democrat because you want to help the social safety net and all that. I totally respect you, and we can have our differences. Exactly. But when you are totally on a different plane of logic and reason, i.e. there's none there, I'm like, well, that's weird.
Exactly. And it's tough because I'm always a person, hence this platform. Like, I'm always someone that's like, well, let's have a conversation. And I really appreciate being able to engage. But I tell you, over the past several years, it has been so bizarre. To just say, well, let's have a conversation. And like you said, they start talking about something that like alien invasion type stuff. And you're just like, okay. Like, all right.
It's like if you're not operating on the same plane of existence, or you're not starting off on the same playing field, you just kind of, miss each other.
Exactly.
And it's confusing.
And it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to, because people, you really start, like, you sound crazy. Yeah. You don't want, because these are, intelligent people. They're adult people. They're parents and grandparents, and and you want to have this like real life conversation, like even for the future of the generations. And they can't even see see that far ahead.
Yeah,
Which
you
is
can't like
crazy.
agree on basic facts. Because
Exactly.
facts don't mean anything anymore to some
Exactly.
people.
Yeah.
So
Like even with the formula thing, like that,
yeah,
these are like softball issues that,
totally.
you should be able to come together and make a decision on.
Absolutely. Everybody should care about that. Why would you not care about making sure babies are fed?
Right.
And, a lot of that is based on in non-understanding of scientific facts. Like, I
Yeah.
know people are like, oh, well, just start breastfeeding again. That's not a thing. You can't
Yeah.
will milk into your breasts. Um,
Exactly.
and I know that there are some women who can never breastfeed. They don't,
Exactly.
have enough milk come in, and formula exists for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So yeah, and I think we have to like figure out ways to really, be more supportive of one another.
yeah,
And I think it really does come back down to this choice. So I think for anybody, that's listening, I think to the degree that you can support an individual's choice, right? What to do with their own bodies.
yeah,
That's a great start. I don't think you can go wrong when you're talking about adult people being able to make decisions about their own being. I don't think you can go wrong with that, regardless of
totally
what you
agree.
believe, what side of the aisle you sit on, with whatever.
Yeah,
When we can give each other enough, space and grace to make the decisions that we think is best for ourselves.
yep,
I think that's just a healthy start.
yes, yes. Just being respectful of somebody's autonomy.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
And I knew this time was going to fly so fast. But I think this is such a great conversation. But was there anything that you wanted to, share, or point you wanted to make that maybe you didn't get a chance to share?
No, I don't think so. I think we kind of, fit everything in there, and
Yeah.
it was all very cohesive.
Right. And
So
I pray that when people listen to this, because even for, like I said, with Girlfriend Therapy, the nature of this platform is faith-based.
yeah,
But I'm not religious at all. And so I don't really get hung up on what people think, it's
yeah,
supposed to look like, but just
not
really
legalistic.
not legalistic at all, but really just kind of taking a look at the lay of the land. And if it's not a fight that you need to be fighting, hence myself, or at least not fighting against, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think we want everybody that's for it to be for it. But
Hmm.
if it's not something that impacts me directly, it would be um, just, I think, inappropriate at the least, right? For me to try to
Yeah.
say, no, you should have, or you shouldn't be able to choose, or that's not my call to make.
Yeah. It's like, long story short, people should stay in their lane.
There you go. Exactly. Stay in your lane. Well, you guys
Yeah.
heard it here. No, Sydney, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I knew it was one that needed to be had.
Yeah.
I feel like this is probably just the beginning of that conversation. And I look
Definitely.
forward to, even on this platform, kind of going into that conversation deeper as, things begin to unfold over the next few months or years, or however long it takes. And my prediction is that it will die down
Yeah.
and probably never come to a decision. But I don't know. I don't know what kind of pressure they're getting. And I think unfortunately, the Supreme Court is positioned to kind of make a decision that may go against, women's rights to choose. And I think it's a very real thing to be, pay attention to.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you
Yeah.
so much for
Thank you
joining
so much
us.
for having me. This was really fun, and I'm glad, we had this time to talk about it.
Yes. And thank you for being brave enough to say, yeah, I think this is the conversation. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it. So thank you guys so
Absolutely.
much. I hope that this was helpful. I'm sure, again, there's more conversation to be had around this topic. Yeah, so just kind of, keep our foots on the necks of the politicians that's making these decisions, really be involved, stay involved, and, protect ourselves. Like, if we can't do anything else, let's protect ourselves, protect the nation, protect the future. Like, come on, this is the easy stuff, right? So thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Until next week, blessings, guys. And yeah, until next week.